You're getting arrested right now?
I'm being arrested.
For what?
For being in my own home.
Thousands of people have lost their homes.
We're talking squatters who try to use the law to take control of a property.
It's really tough to get these folks out.
The person's in the house, and you can do nothing about it.
But Flash Shelton,
he can get rid of the unwanted guests.
I am the squatter hunter.
Kind of reminds me of like a Batman vigilante who's taking matters into their own hands because the police can't do anything.
I'm armed and I'm trained, both mentally and physically. I can get people to do whatever I want them to do just simply by the tone of my voice. I figured out that I could use exactly the same loophole, the same system to get the squatter out. The only difference is I'm using it for good. The law allows me to do it. Why wouldn't I do it? If they could take a house, I can take a house.
Flash, it is an honor to have you on the podcast. For the last few months, I know you've been in dozens of countries. Your videos have been viewed hundreds of millions of times across just about every platform possible. And you're known as the Squatter Hunter.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
How did you get that name, the Squatter Hunter?
You know, I was asked at one point by media, actually, they asked me, like, what do you want to go by? What, like, are you Spider-Man? Basically something like that. And I just right away went to like, you know what? I said that. Squatter Hunter just came out so easy. So that day I just said, I am the Squatter Hunter. I am the Squatter Hunter.
Kind of reminds me of like a Batman vigilante who's going and like taking matters into their own hands because the police can't do anything.
Yeah, basically, because that vigilante, even if they're not a vigilante that is, like Batman, isn't killing people, right? It's not vigilante justice. He's basically bringing them to the law within the law. So what I'm doing is basically using the same law, the same system, and I'm just bringing them to my kind of justice.
How do you get started doing that?
I was a victim. My mom was a victim. I was a good son taking care of my mom. That's how I got started.
So what happened?
My father had passed away. We moved my mom out of this remote location in Northern California, thought, medical, there's no family up there, moved her in with me to sell the home. We list the home. I get a report that there's lights on the house and people, there was a back door broken in. I did what everyone would do. I call the sheriff. I tell him, look, my mom's vacant home that we're selling has been broken into. The sheriff goes out. They say, yeah, the back door's broken in, but it's not vacant. There's a house full of furniture. And then I heard the words that everyone fears. There's nothing we can do. It's a civil matter.
How is that a civil matter? If someone trespasses in a vacant property, why can the police not do anything about it?
What I have learned is that if I didn't specifically say it was a vacant home, if I just said someone broke in the home, they would have arrested them. If I would have had cameras, if I would have had an alarm system so that I could document when and who broke in, they would be arrested for trespassing. The fact that I couldn't say that they specifically broke in, I couldn't say when they entered, then it becomes a civil matter.
Why couldn't you just say, hey, these people broke in at some point in the last few days. I wasn't there, but they have no right to be in there. They're trespassers. Could you have said something like that?
I tried every argument. I'm on the phone with the deputy. I'm about 10, 12 hours away, and I've got a deputy telling me, I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do.
That's absurd. It seems like such a broken system at that point.
That's what I felt. I felt like all the pain. I have the pain of the passing of my father, that I'm trying to take care of my mother. And then I had to realize that, it was something that I had to take care of without letting my mom know about it.
You didn't tell your mom?
I didn't tell my mom. I couldn't tell her. She was already in an emotional state dealing with losing her husband, like that she's been with since high school. So I couldn't tell her. I had to tell her that I was going to be going and doing repairs on the house and that I wanted a lease from her. I broke the laws down. I figured out loopholes. I figured out when squatters obtain rights. And I figured that if they could take a house, I could take a house and I would outsquat them. I got a lease because I had read many things online about squatters having fake leases. So I got a lease from my mom, said I was going to go up there and do repairs. And I just didn't want anyone questioning me and what I was and who, what I was doing there. Waited for them to leave, got up there early morning, and I witnessed 5 men and 2 women in 3 cars pull out of the driveway around 8:30 in the morning. And I went, secured the back door, put up cameras and waited for them to return.
So was kicking out the squatters at your mom's place easy or was that complicated? How'd that go?
My preparation was dead on. I had everything prepared. I was expecting the worst and, everything just kind of worked out. But the main thing that made mine successful and easy is the fact that they all left. In a lot of cases, I would have one person left in there. And at that point, I'd have to, make a decision to actually go in on them, move in with them, because I can't physically grab them and throw them out, but I can make them want to leave on their own.
So in the case of your mom's house, how did you make sure they weren't armed or they were dangerous or that you might be walking into a situation where you could get hurt?
I am armed and dangerous.
Okay. That's you. You're the dangerous one. Okay.
I'm armed and I'm trained, both mentally and physically. I'm trained in de-escalation. I'm certified in de-escalation. So you can see my mannerisms, my voice, how I can get people to do whatever I want them to do just simply by the tone of my voice. In those situations, I am prepared that they are armed, but I know that I'm going to lower the risk by catching them outside of the house. I'm rarely ever confronting them when they have their weapons inside, they have the house behind them. I'm usually putting myself in a position where I am between them and the house.
How do you catch them outside?
They're not homeless. They're not needy. They're people that are going to work. I find that most squatters get up in the morning, go to work. They have a job. They work at home. They still have to go out and get groceries or, I will spend days literally just doing surveillance to document their movements. That way I know like every Tuesday they leave at, 2:00 and they're gone for 3 hours. Or if there's some sort of system, I'm figuring that out. I don't take a call and go right out and rush out to do something. I make sure that I know absolutely everything about the person I'm going to go after, where they are, who they are, how many kids they have, who their parents are, whatever. If they have social media, if there's something that I can expose, if they have something to lose, they're the easy ones because just influence alone. Most of these squatters, I can just say, look, Google me, go to my YouTube, look at my following, look at the news. I can have news out here by tomorrow. A lot of times I'm just using my influence. So if people really want to help me get squatters out, they don't need to contribute. They just need to subscribe because it's the numbers is what helps me. Most people don't want to be public.
What surprises me is the fact that these are very just your average daily people that are squatting in these houses. You'd think that it would be like homeless people out on the street and they're just like, oh, look, it's an open front door. But maybe they just aren't as aware of the legal system and how this works, so they don't capitalize on that. Whereas the average person that goes to their average job, yada, yada, they could be aware of these like weird loopholes and everything and capitalize and save a couple $1,000 on rent.
I don't think it's a lack of knowledge. I think it's a lack of heart. I think that what I have seen is that squatters are self-entitled. They're narcissistic. It's a criminal type. It's somebody that can literally look at you, knowing that they are putting you out on the street, knowing that you're losing your home, knowing that you're going bankrupt, and still be able to say, I'm a victim. That's a mentality that isn't the average person. A homeless person doesn't mean that they don't have a heart. It doesn't mean that they don't care about other people. They are in their situation because something that has nothing to do with you and I, and they don't hold it against us. Squatters hold society against them. Basically, they figure that there's a law, there's a loophole, there's a system. It's allowing it to happen, so why not me? A homeless person would be like, there's an empty sidewalk, I've got a tent, I'm good. Because homeless people, they tend to stick to themselves. They don't break into people's houses.
So what happened in the event of your mom's house? How did you go about getting them out of the property? Because I believe this is what started it all.
They didn't have established rights as far as civil process yet. So with absence of that, if I had a lease, if they came up with a fake lease, then I would be able to basically take my real lease up against their fake lease, and I would move in with them. Once I waited for them to leave, I locked the doors, put the cameras up. I talked to a couple guys across the street. I told them, hey, I've got squatters in this house across the street. There's a house full of furniture. There are a couple college-age guys, big guys. And I said, do you need any furniture? And they're like, yeah. I said, at 5 p.m., if you don't see a bunch of furniture in this driveway, come over, help me get it out, and you can have absolutely anything you want. When the squatters returned, I told them, look, it's my house now. Everything in this house is, as far as I'm concerned, abandoned after today. So you have a choice. You can leave with your furniture or without your furniture, but now there are cameras up, an alarm system. And if you break back in the house, I'm going to prosecute. I said, I've got some people that are ready to come and take your furniture and keep it if you don't have it out.
So you were there, they came up, you told them you have to remove your furniture because it's abandoned. And this is a civil matter.
I basically told them that they had till the end of the day to get the furniture out of the house, or it's mine and I sell it. I will lock it up in the house and they won't be able to get in without breaking in. And I figured out that squatters typically, they gain their rights when the process is started. They can't prove that they've been in there, just like you can't prove how long they've been in there. They can't. In most cases, when you hire an attorney and they serve a notice on them, that notice is basically giving them those rights. That notice says that you are acknowledging that they're living in your house. So if the sheriff doesn't do a report, and I don't reach out to them, and I'm not acknowledging that they live there, then if I can wait for them to leave and there's no evidence of them basically having any kind of rights, I assume those rights. If they could take a house, I can take a house.
But the problem is evidence of them being there could be their furniture, it could be their shoes, it could be anything, right?
Yeah, but then you bring in anything and that's your evidence, correct?
You're right. Now, society says that it's a civil matter. And most people take the civil process to them and try to fight to get them out. What I do is outside the box. I say I kick them out and force them to fight to get back in.
But you know what? I want to take a quick break to mention this, that AI could possibly be the most important new computer technology ever.
We actually use AI on every single episode of the Iced Coffee Hour, and people are like, Jack, what do you use it on? And guess what? I'm not going to tell you. But the problem is that AI actually needs a lot of speed and processing power. So how can you compete without costs spiraling out of control?
That's why it's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or our sponsor, OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. The benefit here is that OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one fixed price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does it better than Oracle. That, of course, means that now you're able to train your AI models at twice the speed and at half the cost of other clouds.
So if you want to do more and spend less like Uber,
8x8,
and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/iced.
Again, that's oracle.com/iced using the link down below in the description. Enjoy. And now let's get back to the episode.
So how expensive is it if you do want to go through the actual legal process of kicking out a squatter?
You know, I've come up with basically based on the hundreds that I've dealt with, it's like a $20,000 to $30,000 and it's 6, 8, 10 months, a year to get a squatter out.
20 to 30
I have
grand?
some people in New York right now that have spent over $100,000 and they still have a squatter.
How is it so expensive? My understanding was that it's 5 to 8 grand, and a lot of that loss is simply in lost rent.
The problem here is that squatters have the better attorneys. And the reason they have the better attorneys is because they only have to focus on one thing. The only thing a squatter's attorney has to do is focus on extension. So that is turning the fees, right? That is forcing the homeowner to spend money. If they can extend that process until that homeowner is exhausted, at that point, these attorneys are at that point going to a homeowner and asking for $20,000 to get their squatter out. I have met a lot of people that have said that they've struggled even being able to hire an attorney because they look at it as a lost cause. Now, for me, it's actually working out because attorneys are actually starting to refer my services. They're looking at homeowners saying, look, you know, I'm really, to be honest with you, I might not be able to get your squatters out, okay? Because that they know that these attorneys they're just playing the system. I have a family in Palmdale, California. They got a quote from an attorney. He quoted them $5,000 up front and $7,000 a week to get them out.
So in that case, it seems like it would be better off financially instead of hiring a lawyer to go straight to the tenant. I hate to say this, but just say, hey, instead of paying this lawyer 30 grand, I'll pay you 10 grand to leave. Is that a good idea? I mean, I know it's a dangerous thing because then you could basically go into any vacant house and hold it
It's
hostage.
just going to make everyone turn into squatters. Like next 7 best side hustles, guys.
Yeah, and that's already happening. Homeowners are going to them, but the problem is that the squatter that was taking $5,000, $10,000, that doesn't exist anymore. I have a squatter that wants $300,000. They're like, look, this is what your house is worth.
How much is the house worth?
The house is like, $1.5 million or something, and they want $300,000 to go out. I have not met a squatter now that wants less than $20,000 to move out.
Now, this is a stupid question. What if, hypothetically, in an alternate universe, they were tenants and they had a legitimate lease agreement, but then you could go in also with a legitimate lease agreement, move in while they're away, and say, well, now it's mine. What's to stop that in a situation like that?
Well, I mean, if they have a legitimate lease agreement and, it's going to be sorted out by a judge. So if it turned out that I was there and it was my mom who owned the house and they had a legitimate lease, then there are laws to protect them from me in that situation. I would be the one that would probably face charges.
But they wouldn't be able to enter the house. Like, what I'm saying is even a tenant, if you were to move in on a legitimate tenant using the same strategies, the tenant would be on the street in the same capacity as a squatter would be.
And that happens. It happens all the time. I have some of my clients are actually tenants.
Yeah.
I have, tenants that, because when they go to turn the house back, the landlord or management company or whatever refuses to accept their notice because they're responsible to return a home squatter free. So tenants are trying to walk away from the house, but they can't because they're obligated to get those squatters out. I had a tenant in Vegas that she left to take care of her sick friend. When she came back, there was a husband and wife living in the house, and she had squatters. The management company said it's on you, so she had to get the squatters out. She actually went to jail because she was trying to get them out, and it was still considered self-help because she was basically, going in. She called the police, and they showed a lease and ended up arresting the tenant actually that was trying to get the squatters out.
What did they arrest the tenant for?
Because she was animated, and they ended up arresting her for assault because she was so distraught and so upset that she was like waving her arms, and the officers felt threatened.
Why does this not happen to every single house that's like 80% done in construction?
The only thing I can say that is going to stop people from, moving into a house like that is if you notice construction sites all have no trespassing signs, and they all have registered no trespassing signs. So if you break into a house that's, 80, 90% done, then right away it's no trespassing and they're arrested.
So I'm curious then registered no trespassing signs, can you put that on an occupied residence and register it?
In some states, they actually allow you to list a name of the individual that you don't want to trespass. So it could be listed on an occupied home. If you say it's a former roommate and you don't want them back and you just got them out of the house, you can file a form that says that this individual can't trespass.
But you don't know the person who's moving in there. It seems weird that you would think it would be only this person can live here. Anyone else is, but it doesn't make sense to list who you don't want because you don't know their name.
You don't know. So most no trespassing signs, and when you register them, there isn't a name. So yes, you can put a no trespass sign on your gate of your home, but it really doesn't make sense or doesn't really matter if you don't register it with local law enforcement. So like in my incident, at the end of my video, I talked about going to the sheriff, and he said, hey, fill out this form, and this way we can arrest anyone that enters the property. And it was a no trespass form. I recommend cameras, alarm, no trespass signs, but actually registered, not just going and buying a sign and put it up because, like you can see in my last video, the guy broke in the house, just ripped the no trespass sign off the door and then broke in the house.
Has squatting always been an issue? Why does it seem like the media is just in a complete state of frenzy about it right now if there's been no laws that have actually changed to allow this?
I'd like to think that I had something to do with, that it just being very, very aware right now. But this has been going on, disguised as other things for years and years. There is no actual squatter right. Okay. And a lot of people will argue squatters don't have rights because squatters, squatter laws and squatter rights basically from the 1800s. It was land. It was, if you look it up, if you Google and you look up the actual definition of squatter rights, it was right to undesignated land by government. And it was rights to, settlers that could settle on land, build on land, settle in there for the winter, and then, travel to their location. Somebody else coming into that land could settle in that home and decide to live there. Squatter rights now are just blurred between renter rights by tenant rights. It's, squatters are just assuming tenant rights. That's all it is. It's just giving them the exact same process that an actual rent-paying tenant has. When I propose these law changes, it's all about a clear distinction between squatters and tenants to where, squatters would be criminal. Squatters that go in and take over a residential maintained home. We're not even talking about homes that are abandoned. We're talking about, because there's a community out there that are saying, well, you can't get rid of this because what about the vacant buildings and the vacant houses? And we're not even talking about that. We're talking about residential maintained homes. People go on vacation and come home to squatters. It's, a squatter can drive through the neighborhood and see a house they want, start sending mail to that house, show up in that house, get to the mailbox, get their mail out of it before you get their mail, walk into your house with a backpack and put clothes in a closet. Now they have mail and they have clothes in that house. They're a squatter and they live there and they have rights. That, unfortunately, is the system we are dealing with. It's not like, oh, there's a house that's been abandoned and vacant and they're going to fix it up and they're going to increase the values in the neighborhood. That's not what we're talking about here. This whole uproar is, people taking over actual maintained homes. There is no upkeep or back taxes to pay. Okay. But, the reason why we're hearing it is because we're in the day of, social media and everything we hear about, regardless of what it is, we're hearing about it a lot more now just because of the way the system is.
But you know what? Before we go into that, we got to do some quick math because the less money your business spends, the more money you get to keep. But with higher expenses on materials, employees, distribution, and borrowing, everything is costing a lot more. So to reduce costs and headaches, smart businesses are upgrading to our sponsor, NetSuite by Oracle. For those unaware, NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system that brings accounting, financial management, inventory, and HR into one platform and one source of truth.
With NetSuite, you reduce IT costs because it lives in the cloud with no hardware required, and you can access it from anywhere.
Not to mention, you could cut the cost of maintaining multiple systems because with NetSuite, you have one unified business management suite.
You basically improve cost and efficiency by bringing all of your major business processes into one platform, thereby slashing manual tasks and errors.
Over 37,000 companies have already made the move, so do the math and see how much money you'll profit with NetSuite.
And due to popular demand, NetSuite has decided to extend its one-of-a-kind flexible financing program for just a couple more weeks. All you got to do is head over to netsuite.com/iced.
That is netsuite.com/iced, netsuite.com/iced with the link in the description. Thank you so much. And now let's get back to the episode. Now, I'm curious though, in your example of having like a furnished house, you go on vacation, you come back and somebody's living there. How do you differentiate between that and an actual tenant? Because I'm sure in those cases, if you come back to your house after going on vacation for a week, you come back and they say, well, no, I signed a lease. Mm-hmm. How do you differentiate between the two? Well, isn't that still just a civil matter at that point?
Yeah. Are they paying rent? I think that's the big thing. Can you show that you have paid rent, ever paid rent?
Yep.
The other thing, so like when I have to be very careful not to fall into a trap. I can't have a homeowner contact me and say, I have a squatter, but it turns out to be a tenant. I have a different system that I do to help with non-paying tenants, but I have to make sure that I have a clear understanding going forward. I also give them an opportunity to defend themselves. So if they can show a text message or anything, I mean, if you've ever paid rent, you're going to be able to show that you've paid rent.
Yeah, but what if they pay rent to like a friend? Because I've seen a lot of scams on Craigslist where people would go and list a place that's empty. The tenant has no idea. They send rent to like, some other country. They move in. The tenant says, oh, here's the lockbox combo. And they go and they take the key. And the people who moved in have no clue.
Yeah. So,
or they could stage that. They could just have a buddy be like, hey, pretend to be the landlord. I'm going to send you like $500. Here's some text messages that we have. All right, done.
That's happening a lot right now. And, you know, the whole like 1200 squatter Atlanta, a lot of those people talked about the fact that they felt that they were scammed, that they're victims. Okay. Whether it's honest or they're just you making up that story. And I've had a lot of incidents where, and I have a family right now in Los Angeles where they basically, you know, they had a renter, the renter moved out, sent the painter to get the house ready. Painter goes and says, hey, there's like a family living here. And the family shows a lease and says, yeah, we ordered that we rented this house on Craigslist. And how I treat it basically is, you know, I'm sorry that you got scammed. Give us all the information. Let's file a police report. Give all the information you can. Who did you send the money to? Where did you send it to? And I'm sorry you got scammed. But the truth is, if it was a car, we would take the car from you because you received stolen property. A house, I'm going to take the house from you and I'm going to give it back to the homeowner. And then you deal with the police to get your money back and to go after the people that scammed you. Because just because you're scammed doesn't mean that it's okay for the homeowner to lose out on his home and be scammed also.
How common is this?
I don't know statistically. I know that I'm hearing more and more of it. I would say that I have personally dealt with about 10 in the last 45 days.
Do you think that you bringing attention to it might make the situation worse? That people all of a sudden who've never thought of this could see your situation and say, wow, I never thought that I could go and do this. Do you worry about that? Or do you think that your net positive is giving homeowners the ability to say, hey, you could take matters into your own hands. It doesn't have to be expensive. Here's what you do. Here's a clear outline.
Well, first of all, I'm absolutely not telling homeowners to take the matter into their own hands because you know, not only is it a safety issue, but they are not allowed to. Homeowners, they have to be very clear that a homeowner cannot do this or they will be arrested.
Really?
Yeah, there are laws against self-help. The reason why I can and the reason why I could was because my mom was the homeowner and I wasn't tied to the house.
That's interesting. So if that happens to Jack, Jack couldn't go in. But if Jack has me go in, that's okay?
As long as they can't prove that he hired you and brought you in.
Right.
Yeah.
It seems so backwards that, again, like you said, that if you go and file something and you get an attorney and you register documents with the court, then you can't do any of this. So all of this has to be done I don't want to say outside of the legal system, but before filing anything and acknowledging their tenants.
Yeah, it just limits, like, I can't do a lockout. Okay. I can't do a lockout if you've acknowledged that your squatters are there. Okay. But I can talk to them and take video of them and basically show them a preview that I'm going to post their name and their, you know, work, their Instagram, all their social media, and tell everybody where they are and influence them to make the right decision to leave.
And then are you worried that you're bringing attention to this and potentially people could see this as an opportunity that they could exploit as well?
Anytime media, okay, and I've said many times, like us talking about it is going to influence change, whether it's increasing it or getting rid of it. We take that chance. But in this situation, I think that is much more valuable to raise awareness so that homeowners are prepared, so that they know what to do to protect their homes. And even the bigger picture, we're starting to get states to start to change laws. That's the goal. Because if they make it criminal, that just alone is going to get most of these squatters to think twice.
What are the commonalities you've noticed with people who are squatting? Is there like an age range, type of education background? Are these smart people? Do they usually have a criminal history? Are they one-offs? Like what are some of the traits that they have?
I wonder if they have different mental disorders. Like if they are like actual narcissists, or they have like antisocial personality disorder, or they're like sociopaths, or they have some disconnect in their brain that the average person doesn't have. Because I see these videos and they're so like you said, entitled and like self-righteous too. Like they think they're doing the right thing. And it seems like they're void of any like empathy.
I think that this is tying into also why we're going to notice an influx in this. because whether it's a mental condition or not, there's a whole generation of entitlement. When I run into a squatter that's been in a location for 5 years, 10 years, some of them even 20 years that these people have taken over these buildings and stuff, they're middle-aged, white, any race, every race. But now I'm looking at like younger, like 20s and 20s and 30s and like younger people. And right away, it's just an entitlement. And there's so many areas right now in our life where we're looking at people going, oh my God, you just act like you watch all these social media things and you're like, the mentality is entitlement. So that alone could be what's going to increase this. I haven't met any squatters that are like mentally, or I haven't had any issues with like violent because of mental issues, but it's a total, like, the law allows me to do it. Why wouldn't I do it? I mean, that's it, and part of me is like, well, because you're hurting somebody, but part of me is like, you're right. I mean, bottom line is you're right. The system is broken. The system is what we have to focus on. Changing the laws is what we have to focus on, because we're not going to change people's mind. We're not going to change that they believe that if there is a loophole to get around something, then they are entitled to use it. We're not going to change that. So we have to just change the system. And look at me. What did I do to get squatters out? I figured out that I could use exactly the same loophole to get the squatter out. That's what I'm doing. The only difference is I'm using it for good. I'm not using it to take advantage of someone. I'm using it to get rid of the people.
So let's talk about this system, because I find it very clever and also just hilarious what you're doing. It is like so ironic. So what you do essentially, like in the simplest of terms, is these people, they come and they squat in a client's house, and then you try to make their existence as uncomfortable as possible to where they voluntarily forsake no rent living and move out of a house, correct?
Yes, if it gets to that. That would be like stage 3 for me.
You don't want to hit stage 3.
No.
Yeah.
So walk us through these stages.
Because, bottom line is, I would rather stay at home with my teenagers.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd rather not have to go move in with someone. But like, for us, it's like I do consultations. So I do Zoom consultations to start off on every single case.
Is that stage 1?
That is just to see if I'm even, if I can, I'll guide them, give advice. Sometimes I'm just listening because they're feeling like no one is listening to them right now. So sometimes I'm just literally a shoulder, somebody for them to vent to. In many cases, I'm giving them advice and telling them which action they should go and what the route, and if they can, if it's something they can do on their own through other help, other resources, or if they can go down to the law enforcement and file, a no trespassing, form, and basically get them out that way. There's different ways I'll do it in a Zoom. If we determine that they're going to actually hire one of my crews or myself to go and take care of it, then we'll start out with phase 1 would be, we do surveillance and recon for a few days. Maybe a week prior to even starting, I'm looking at cameras. I'm doing background screening. I'm looking at everything that I can possibly find out about these squatters. Then we go to the location and we'll spend a few days sitting outside. If it's an apartment, if there's a vacant apartment, we'll take over, or we're sitting in trucks outside. We're basically watching them and getting to know and documenting their movements. Day 4, we either, if they're leaving during those first 4 or 5 days, if they leave, then we possibly, if it's a situation where we can legally do a lockout, we lock them out, wait for them to return, and hope that when law enforcement gets there, that they basically tell them the words that, that I have now turned into the best words that I want to hear is, it's a civil matter and there's nothing we can do. Now, I previously go into law enforcement prior to every job. I talk to the supervisors, tell him who I am, what I'm going to be doing, what the address is, in hopes that the responding officer does the right thing. Or I say, here, speak to your supervisor. And I explain to him, look, you are only allowed to make sure it's safe, and then you can excuse yourself. So as long as I'm on the same page with law enforcement, a lockout is successful. Now, in a case where they don't leave, we are forced to go basically to the next phase, which would be a possible move in. And that's where we're moving in, putting cameras up in every room and just sitting down, having a conversation with them and telling them how their life is going to change.
How is their life about to change?
Because their life is a reality show. And from that day forward, everyone and anyone who wants to know who they are and if they should ever rent to them in the future, they're going to be able to see their face, their name. They're going to know all about them. And the fact that I've got a squatter list that I'm putting out, and I'm going to do the squatters first, and I'm going to do non-paying tenants next. But the squatters list is going to have names, faces, like pictures, description of how they entered properties, the location, to where a landlord in the future will be able to look up, Google, go onto my website, type in a name, type in a city, and see faces of all the squatters so that when they're going to rent a place, they can make sure they're not on that list.
But you know what? Before we go into that, it seems like these days, a lot of people are looking into the benefits of fasting, like weight loss, better gut health, increased physical performance, and mental clarity. As someone who's tried this myself, just straight up skipping meals or not eating at all for the entire day is rather intimidating, and it's not for everybody. And that's why our sponsor, Prolon, was created.
Prolon is a revolutionary plant-based nutrition program that nourishes the body while making cells believe that they're fasting.
Having been researched and developed for decades at the University of Southern California's Longevity Institute and backed by leading U.S. medical centers, Prolon helps promote healthy blood sugar, support cardiovascular health, and reduce abdominal fat.
You basically get a lot of the benefits of doing a fast while still being able to consume some food. I actually tried this a couple of weeks ago, and it all starts with Prolon's 5-day program, which includes snacks, soups, and beverages, all designed to keep your body in a fasting state. When I received the 5-day program from Prolon, I was very surprised at just how easy they make it for you. Basically, you have a box for every single day. It's all organized, and they tell you exactly what you need to eat and at what time. The food tasted great. The nut bar was my absolute favorite, and even just after the first day, I was actually feeling really good. So if you want to give it a shot, try out Prolon right now because they're actually offering 10% off their 5-day nutrition program.
All you got to do is go to prolonlife.com/ICH. Again, prolonlife.com/ICH to get 10% off of their 5-day nutrition program.
The link is, of course, down below in the description. Thank you so much, Prolon, and back to the episode.
What I found remarkable is that you said you could put cameras on the interior of the property as long as it's not within their bedroom.
Their bedroom and
a bathroom. Yeah.
The law allows me to put cameras up anywhere.
Can you film their door from the outside?
Yeah, I can film. I can put a camera in the living room or in the hallway or whatever. So
can you put microphones right underneath their door where it's in the hallway, but it's right underneath their door and the pickups are facing their room?
Well, so, we're in the world of avoiding gray areas. So I probably would just, I don't know that I would want to hear anything going on in there anyway.
Right. But maybe the people consuming the online reality TV show would.
Right.
I was going through this rabbit hole and thinking of all these clever ways that you could make someone extremely uncomfortable. And guys, if you can think of anything, please comment because I think this is really funny and also a good idea.
It's a good Twitch channel.
It's a great Twitch channel. Just constantly be live streaming.
24/7 live streams.
There was something that existed. I think it was called like the Fishbowl or something where they had a house and there were cameras everywhere throughout the house and it was live streaming 24/7. And it was a reality TV show. I don't know if it was on Twitch.
I thought FaZe did something similar.
I think it was a content house of sorts, but I would love that where you could just tune in and just watch some random person that's squatting to make their existence very uncomfortable. But other ideas that I had, could you make the house smell really bad? Could you maybe use toilets and not flush the toilets? Could you play music very, very, very loud? Between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m.
Everything is on the table.
And screeching sounds.
I have heard recently that fart spray is really effective.
I can imagine that. Yeah. That's a wow. What other ideas do you think you could employ to kick a squatter out?
I would just think music. But then again, I worry that if you go to those extremes, they might become hostile. Like it'll maybe anger people to a point where there could be a confrontation. But then again, if it's on camera, then you could have them arrested for assault.
Yeah. And I have to be very careful if there are children.
Yeah.
If it's elderly, I don't want to take a chance on giving an elderly person a heart attack or, I don't need them carried out of the house. Yeah. I want to have fun with it. And my person, it's like, I'm a serious guy at sometimes, but my personality, I'm the funny guy. I've always been the funny guy. So when I talk to these people, it's like, I'm trying to kind of have fun with it, but I have to be humane about it as well. But yeah, I mean, everything is on the table. But ultimately, what I have found is that the shock of a bunch of big guys coming in and sitting on their couch and cameras going up, and the fact that their kids are going to be seen on TikTok, and all their friends, when they go to school, are going to see their kids and hear that their friends' parents aren't paying rent and they're squatters. That's not something a family wants to deal with. So if it's a family, they're moving out. The hardest part for me is somebody who doesn't care about their reputation. They have nothing to lose. That's the hardest one for me. I have one that you can see on Outside the Box with Flash. You can see on the YouTube. I called it Craziest Squatter Caught in the Dark. You know, she's literally climbing in a bedroom window. I have removed electricity. I have removed access to the rest of the house, removed the bathroom, and she still climbs in and out of this bedroom window because she's determined to stay there until the old woman passes away, because she has it in her mind that this is going to be her house.
I mean, that seems like mental illness to me.
But mental illness, I mean, she's got $130,000 in the bank account, and she works, and she's like a normal person, and she figured out that if she could become a caregiver and go in and make entrance to a home, that nobody'd be able to get her out. She's smart.
So she's still there?
She's still there.
And where is this?
Culver City, California.
You cannot block her out of this bedroom by boarding up that.
No, because law enforcement has been called way too many times. So there's a record of her living there. I'm working with social services. And the other big factor here is that caregivers have access to their bank accounts. So they drain all their money. We're looking to relocate her. Her case is the reason why I started GoFundMe for helping elderly victims, because many times, I mean, it's not just elderly, but by the time they call me, they have no resources. They can't pay for an attorney. She's lived with this woman for over 2 years because she can't afford to fight to get her out.
Why don't you just get that woman fired? She is fired. She was fired.
So what happened with that Culver City example? How did this occur? How did she meet the older lady?
The older lady hired her through an agency. The agency supplies a caregiver. The caregiver goes in. She wasn't caregiving. The old lady says, I want her fired. The agency fires her and says, she's like, okay, we'll get her out of my house. And the agency says, well, we fired her, but there's nothing we can do to get her out of your house. You know, caregivers, many times, they're live-in caregivers, so they're considered renters.
How did the caregiver get access to the bank account, though?
Because caregivers do the elderly people's banking. They go and they make deposits for them and withdrawals for them.
They gave power of attorney to this person?
I don't know specifics if this particular one, but I would imagine in a lot of cases they get power of attorney.
Why can't you make some like really horrible obstacle course for her to be able to get to her window, or just like fart spray or like, all in the room?
So it's funny you say that, because the Adam Fleishman one, have you ever seen, there's a movie called Boxing Helen?
Mm-mm.
I believe I have the name right, but Boxing Helen, woman was abducted, right? And finds herself locked in a room. And this sick whatever starts putting up barricades this woman, makes the room smaller and smaller and smaller. Throughout this movie, she's smaller, until at the very end, she's in like a little 3x3 box. My threats to Adam Fleishman was that, law enforcement said he had a room, he had access to a room, that's what he was given. So we started blocking him out from other services in the house, laundry, kitchen, refrigerator locked, okay? What I had told him, my plan was, I said, look, law enforcement says I have to give you access to a bedroom, but it doesn't say how. So what I had planned to do, and I had told him, that basically I was going to block him out. I was either going to have him go through the bedroom window, or I was going to literally block up the front door and create a little tunnel that he would have to crawl in to get to his bedroom.
Yeah, for those unaware, he's the founder of Umami Burger.
Yes.
Which I've been to that restaurant many times at the Grove. I mean, it's a very popular chain of burger restaurants that's
unfortunately really
end.
Good.
Yeah. It's delicious. And the burgers are expensive. I mean, if you want to spend $20 to $30 on a single hamburger, this place is delicious. But Adam is the founder of that. So you would think that he's the type where he's got a lot of money, He's got a lot to lose.
To explain, he started squatting in this house, and you documented this whole thing, and you made his life very hard, where he just voluntarily left on his own.
He left. He turned violent. We were planning a move in. Now, to give you history, this older woman, she called herself elderly, but she was actually only 62. I found out later. She had just lost her husband. She lived in this house for 29 years in Hollywood Hills, and she was forced to financially sell the home that she had been in. She found a buyer that allowed her to stay there and gave her the rights to rent out 3 rooms to afford to stay there. So she put ads out on Craigslist. She had renters, and she had a couple renters, and then this guy Adam shows up, and she thought, oh, this guy's successful. You look online, he's supposedly made like $70 million, and he shows up. Her very first interaction with this man, he shows up with a backpack, goes in there. She says, shows him the room, and he says, I'll take it. She's like, well, what do you mean you'll take it? He said, yeah, I'll take it. She says, well, I'll let you know if I'm going to give it to you. And he said, no, you don't understand. I'm not leaving. And she said, I'll call the cops. And he said, fine. By the time the cops show up, he's emptied his backpack, put clothes in the closet. He's a renter. So that's how their relationship started, according to her. Then he kind of talked her into doing this business thing and said, oh, we're going to do, we don't even need the other roommates because we're going to do this pop-up restaurant using your view. And then said, so we're going to do this. I'm going to hire a chef. They're going to come and we're going to make so much money. They go to some store and buy stuff for sushi and buy all this stuff. While they're there, I have a witness that came forward that saw him reach into her purse and steal her credit card, used her credit card to pay for it. Then after they do this pop-up thing and she's supposed to get money from him, he didn't pay her money. She's stuck with a credit card bill. That's how it all started. So, and then she refused to give him a lease. And he was like, well, I'm not going to pay rent because you won't give me a lease. So that's how it all started. And then, she contacted me after he was there for like 4 months. That's when I initially did my first intervention with him. That was what I had to go on when I went to approach him. Watching that video, you can tell how just narcissistic and how there's the whole victimology. And he just, I couldn't get him to show any kind of compassion whatsoever. He basically said, she brought it on herself. It's her fault. We had planned to move in. And then she ended up leaving the house and was sleeping in her car because she was afraid because he was acting really weird. And she had a friend go there to check on the house. And he basically threw this woman to the ground and threatened her life and told her to write an email to him stating that everything that I was saying was a lie and that he's a renter and that he's, got a lease and he pays rent and all this stuff. She reluctantly wrote the email, but you could tell, she sent it to me. You can tell the wording was not like something you would actually be writing. I wouldn't be writing an email to you referring to you as a third person. Mm-hmm. So it didn't make sense. But because he got violent with this woman and I did an interview with her and you can see it on my channel, she's all bruised up, her legs, her arms, she was crying. She was fearful. She left the state of California because he basically told her that her daughter's going to grow up without a mother. Okay. So that caused me to turn up the heat. And instead I just started basically making threats. And I told him that there wasn't a law to protect him from me. And I told him exactly what law enforcement would say if I kicked him out on the street. He called law enforcement on camera. They told him, he's right. There's nothing we can do. The fear of being homeless got him to move.
What was his story? What was his side of the argument? That it was like her fault or that he signed a lease? But I'm trying to think of like why this guy would do that.
I don't know how he lost the restaurants. I don't know, I don't know what, why he is even in this situation. And I've had a dozen people reach out to me now that want to come forward because he has been scamming doing restaurant scams with like many people and taking their money. What I do know is that, he totally believes that he was the victim and that he would have paid rent if she gave him a lease. But she didn't want him there. So she wasn't going to give him a lease. She told him to leave. So just because you want a lease, he just felt like, I have rights. Even non-paying tenants have rights. And he just stuck to that whole thing that I'm not a squatter. I'm a tenant. She didn't give me a lease. Why would I pay her money?
What I found absurd in some of your videos on this instance is he was talking with his friend and he said to his friend, like, oh, when she dies, you can have first grab like at her room, which is just insane to say. And unfortunately, you mentioned this in your videos, but she actually ended her life after
29 days after I got him out.
After you got him out.
Yeah.
Which you would think that, she'd be recovered from this instance.
No.
After it was resolved.
He tore her down financially so much that she was on the verge of losing the house that she had been in with her husband. Her husband had just passed away. Jimmy Buffett literally that week had just passed away, and he was like a father figure to her. She was actually in the Coral Reef Band as one of the backup singers. It was just a lot of loss. And then the fact of being faced with not being able to pay rent. He had scared out all the roommates. So she had no income.
How long was he there for?
5 months.
Wow.
And do you know what he's doing now? Do you think he feels remorse?
He absolutely does not feel remorse. I spoke with him the day after she passed away, or the day after I was notified she passed away. And I had told him, if something happens to her, it's on you. So I reminded him of that. And he basically said, sorry, her life was cut short, but, she brought it on herself. Zero remorse. He, to this day, he still says that it's all lies and that, he's the victim.
That just sounds like a sociopath. It just sounds like he can't feel.
How were you able to post these videos online of him? Were you ever worried about any legal repercussion that he could come after you and say, hey, you're posting my information online, it's defamatory?
He threatened it, but the bottom line is the way I do it, he tells the story, not me. I wasn't the one saying this stuff. I let him talk. Narcissists, if you can just pull a little string, you can get them to they just diarrhea the mouth. So, and that's what he did. He, for an hour and a half, he was telling me the whole story.
So what does it mean to be a civil matter? Instead of a criminal matter or something like that, when it gets sent to civil court, what does that actually look like when it does eventually get solved, if it does? Besides
the fact that there's no criminal element to it, no one's going to jail over it. The civil process is basically all about paperwork to get to a settlement. So there's all these, it's like, okay, you got to give them a 3-day notice. Now you got to give them a 30-day notice. Now you got to give them a 60-day notice. Now there's a 90-day notice. Then they have the ability to say, okay, well, Your Honor, I just filed for bankruptcy. Okay, that gives you an extra 90 days. Oh, I don't have a place to go. Well, okay, well, I'm going to extend it. So
but why does the judge grant these?
So just recently I had a retired judge wrote this big message comment on my YouTube. And he's like, look, I have been on the bench for however many years. And he says, I have oversaw hundreds of these cases. And I was bound by a system that required me to rule in the favor of the tenant or the squatter over the homeowners, because there are these boundaries that they have to live by. So, he says every single time it was done regrettably. And he commended me on what I'm doing, said what I was doing was fully within the law. And, had said I wish this was done, 20 years.
What are the boundaries? Is it that they have to believe the defendant in that case? They have to give them the benefit of the doubt?
Yeah.
Just to be 100%
innocent until guilty?
Yeah, because what I have learned is that because homeowners are never presumed the tenant, tenants always are presumed to have possession. So a homeowner can live in a house or they can rent out a house. So you never know what the situation is and what to believe. So, a tenant is always going to be a tenant. They're not ever the owner. It was done in a way to actually even out the process. Like they have all the money, they have all the resources. The tenant might not. If the tenant isn't paying rent, he can't afford, an attorney. We're going to even out the process so they're both on even ground. And what ended up happening is it just totally flipped to where the tenants have all the power, because the fact is you can't assume a homeowner has money. Because just because they own a home, the bank owns the home, they're paying a mortgage. They're basically a renter to a property that's owned by a bank. So to assume a homeowner has all the resources and the money was wrong in the very beginning.
That makes sense. So there's no real penalty for squatting. It's paperwork.
Zero.
And then if they lose,
they just got to move out.
If they lose, so in the end, if they lose, they're given another 30 days to move out. There's no restitution. There's no court costs. In many cases, there's no attorney fees. And damage, no restitution.
So I don't get it. So my understanding with that, let's just say the homeowner wins. They move out. My understanding is that the homeowner can pursue a judgment against them, but collecting on the judgment is near impossible. Is that correct?
In most cases, in even when you're dealing with a non-paying tenant, even though they're not paying rent and they might be saving money or something, what are the odds of collecting on a judgment when somebody has something, let alone not anything?
Exactly.
They don't own a property.
Nothing. Yeah.
Most tenants don't own another property somewhere.
Right.
So if you're just an average viewer and you have a home right now, how can you protect your home in the best way possible from people coming and squatting? Would that be setting up surveillance around your house? Even if you do have surveillance and you film someone, what if you just accidentally leave the front door unlocked so it doesn't look like they're breaking in and they just are wearing a backpack and they go sit down in a room and put their stuff in the closet?
I have a consultation with a homeowner that asked that very question, and he signed up to do a Zoom consultation because he wanted personal advice. Bottom line is the cheapest, the least expensive thing and the most effective thing that you need is a camera with Wi-Fi, a camera that you can see from anywhere in the world on your phone so that you can document when somebody enters your home. An alarm system that has armed response. That's like number one and number two, basically. After that, go file a form for no trespassing and put no trespassing signs that's registered with your local, law enforcement office that says if anyone enters your property, they can be arrested. And then, because with those three, you're pretty much solid, because at that point, the difference between arresting a squatter and a squatter gaining rights is being able to prove when they entered the property and that they entered the property illegally. And at that point, you're not going to need the squatter hunter.
Now, I'm curious what lawyers take on these cases, though, because you're saying that these squatters have access to really great legal resources. Who takes this on, and why are attorneys doing this?
Well, a lot of states have legal aid, like New York. New York homeowners don't stand a chance. Not only does a squatter have to just figure out a way to stay into a property regardless of how they get in for 30 days, and then they become a full-fledged tenant in New York. But then they have resources that basically fund the attorney process for a squatter, but not a homeowner. So a homeowner, as soon as they run out of money, they're basically, on the verge of losing their home. So there are attorneys that only specialize in tenant rights. And those same tenant rights attorneys deal with squatters. Like if you're a mechanic and you only concentrate on headlights, you're going to be the best headlight mechanic ever because that's what you're concentrating on. And you've got attorneys that have dedicated their field to just being able to keep a squatter in a home. So they're going to appear to be the best attorney.
Now, why don't homeowners have the same legal resources that tenants have? Because I know it's assumed that the homeowner has money and that they own the home and thereby they have equity and they can afford it and the tenant doesn't. But in a lot of cases, the homeowner might be spending more money every month maintaining the property, have very little equity in it.
Yeah, and you basically just said the reason, because the squatter is like, okay, I'm not paying rent. I've got cash, cash hidden away. I'm not using bank accounts. Who knows? They're able to show that they need the help. And then you've got the homeowner who either through equity or the fact that you can't have a bank account with a certain amount of money. There's certain things that you have that will prohibit you from getting that legal aid.
What do you think about Ron DeSantis' new bill in Florida, which makes it a first-degree misdemeanor for making a false statement in writing, for example, a forged lease agreement, a second-degree felony for any person who unlawfully trespasses or occupies a residential dwelling, and a first-degree felony for knowingly advertising the sale or rent of a residential property without legal authority?
Well, first of all, I would say that, I was honored to be a part of his bill signing. I think that it's a step in the right direction for homeowners finally getting the support that they need and deserve. There needs to be, this, but at the same time, it comes with responsibility, because part of that also says that a homeowner can't file a false report against a tenant. So they can't say that a tenant isn't a tenant. So there are penalties for a homeowner as well. It's starting to get other states to take notice as well that, that some of these are just common sense things.
So if it is such a common sense issue, do you see it as something that's partisan? Is there a certain side that is unwilling to negotiate on something like this? Or is this just bipartisan and we wouldn't be able to draw any distinction on who supports it and who doesn't?
There are many things that we have that should be about the people and have nothing to do with politics. And I have made it very clear that politics need to be left at the door on this one. I believe this is 100% has nothing to do with party versus party. Squatters, I can guarantee you, are not asking you your political views before they take over your home. Recently, there have been some reports out that it's a right-wing agenda and that it's rare. The people that are saying it's rare, I will go head to head with them any single day because it's not rare. I was at a going away party yesterday for a friend of mine, and out of 20 people, 3 of them had squatters just by coincidence. We just started talking because my friend was like, oh, you know who he is? And they had active squatters and they're like, oh my God, how do I get a hold of you? It's not rare. It's not, and it is a people thing. This is not a political thing.
Are there certain states that are really squatter friendly and some states that are really not? Like,
name a state that you think would be squatter friendly.
California.
Yes, California is squatter friendly. Name a state that you think that would not be squatter.
Texas.
Oklahoma.
Okay. I would think
Alabama.
I would think
Florida.
Tennessee, but Tennessee has a problem with squatters. Like everyone wants to go to Tennessee.
Yeah.
But
is there like a state that's
Texas, people have squatters. Even states that are friendly or not friendly to squatters have issues because law enforcement, that's not a high priority for them. So they're backlogged. So even a state that says, well, we don't really have squatter rights, we have tenant rights, because the lines are still blurred, they still need to revamp their laws. This is every state, every single state in the United States has some sort of issue, call them tenants or call them squatters. But the states that say we don't have squatter rights, they have tenant rights, and those squatters are becoming tenants. So it's still the same thing. So bottom line is there's no state that right now, from what I've seen, that's completely 100% safe.
What are your thoughts on castle doctrine, which is someone's ability to defend their own home using force?
I mean, I believe in it. The limitation when it comes to squatters is squatters aren't breaking into your home when you're there. Castle doctrine, I believe, should be the use of force defending a home that you're occupying. You should not be able to go into a home that's being occupied by a squatter, a tenant, a relative, anyone, and use force at that point, regardless of what extreme that force is.
Have you ever seen a situation where someone's been at home while people were starting to squat?
No.
So these squatters are calculated.
They're calculated.
They take point of when these people are in the home and when they're not at home.
Probably to squat too, you have to be at least somewhat knowledgeable on like their comings and goings.
Yeah.
Which house they want to target.
There are some sites that are helping and training squatters.
Really?
Yeah. And there's a couple in the UK. And I think I don't know for sure, but I've heard that there's one that I'm trying to find out about in the US. But, a lot of times it's a for sale sign. Another big one is I've got this group in Illinois that I'm working with now, a big realtor group. And what they're finding is that, a lot of them have the system now to where you can contact them. I want to look at this house, and you fill out a form and you send them a copy of your driver's license. And then they send you a code to get in the door. You don't actually meet with an agent. You go in, punch in the code, go in, and they're just staying in the house.
That seems like such a big loophole. That's so common. I remember when I was a real estate agent in LA that everything would be on a lockbox. And I mean, it's never customary to give that to the buyer or the tenant. But there are so many times that I've seen it where it's like, oh, I'm not there last minute. I'm running late. Can I give the tenant the lockbox? They're going to run in really quick. Thankfully, never had an issue. But it seems like a very easy way for tenants to go in and say, well, I had the key. I got in. Even if there's a camera, hey, it shows that I had the combo to get in here.
I have two existing ones that I haven't started on where it was a tenant moving out. And literally squatters moved in before the crew came to get the house ready for the next people. And these people are, in a lot of cases, they're actually breaking in. So they don't need a key. They don't need a lockbox. In my case, they broke in the back door. I pick a lock. They can pick a lock. I have a situation where they got a locksmith to actually give them access. We have video of a locksmith picking the lock and letting the squatters in this house. So, they're smart and they're figuring out ways.
So Graham had a great idea that every lease agreement should be notarized.
That I've brought that up many times.
Yeah,
So
that was
if that is such a simple and obvious solution to this.
I have some inside information about that.
Yeah.
I have been saying when I've outlined what I would do to change a law, like if I'm meeting with a governor, I have outlined, and one of the things I have outlined is notarizing leases, right?
It's so funny.
Should be a no-brainer.
Yeah.
However, the representative in Florida that wrote the law bill that DeSantis signed told me personally at the signing that in his law proposal, it had notarized leases. It did not get accepted. When they voted the process in, they denied the notary part of it. And the reason was, and they all stopped and then they said, do you know how many contracts we write? If we said that a lease would have to be notarized, then we would have to say that every contract has to be notarized. So they didn't want to touch it because they didn't think that it would pass. So they took the notarized leases out of the law in order to get it to pass.
It seems like I get their logic because we sign a lot of contracts over DocuSign. And it's very easy. If someone could just type in a name and a stupid email address and they DocuSign, and I would have no idea. In fact, I had something signed a long time ago that was not me. I had an agency reach out to me and they said, hey, Graham, we've been trying to get a hold of you. We had this agreement. We're supposed to be representing you. Remember this?
Yeah.
And they said that they've been trying to reach me or something like that, but we had this agreement and I was in breach of that agreement. I was like, I've never talked to you before. I have no idea who you are. And so I got on the phone with him. I'm trying to explain, like, I've never talked to you before. I don't know you. And they said, well, do you work with Jack? And I'm like, yeah, I work with Jack. And I called Jack. I'm like, dude, did you sign this on my behalf? And Jack's like, I have no idea who they are. And so I kept trying to figure this out because I'm like, you didn't speak with Jack. You didn't speak with me. Can you show me the communication? And they did. And they sent me emails from somebody took my name and like added a little thing to it.
I think it was EN.
Yeah, that was it. It was like Graham Stephin with an EN, and they made this whole email address. But they were reaching out to agencies, like trying to sign like deals with me, pretending to be me. And they had this whole communication over email saying like that they're me, and the agency never verified it. They never called me. They never spoke with me. Nothing. They just took it at face value because the name kind of matched up, signed an agreement, and was never me. So they apologized, thankfully. But like, it makes me wonder how much is out there. Like I've seen some stuff out there where people have said, oh, we've talked to your representative. I have no idea who they are.
Right, but wouldn't it be pretty easy just to write into the code that it has to be a house?
Yeah. For all real estate related transactions have a notary. Because we were talking to Hassan Piker about this, and that was my one thing. I was like, when it comes to squatters, just notarize a lease. If you don't have a notarized lease, it's non-binding. And I also thought notary should include video. And it should include not just a thumbprint, but it should include a video of you signing it or some sort of facial recognition like they do with passports. Like they just scan your eyes, like the clear, scan the eyes. And that's with the signature on a lease for all real estate transactions. That would solve it.
What I told this representative when he told me this, I said, so they are basically saying that a lease is the same then as every other contract. And I said, so when I'm done with squatters, I'm not done. I said, because then I'm going to go after that. And I said, because right now the lease is the one contract in the United States that's not treated like a contract. Every other contract has an end date, you sever ties. A lease agreement, end date just says we start a new process. So if we're going to treat it like a contract and we're going to say we can't notarize it because then we'd have to notarize all contracts, then let's actually start making a lease agreement an actual contract.
Well, hold up. That just sounds like such an obvious workaround. You just say it has to be, a lease agreement on a house. And they're like, oh, well, we can't do that.
I feel like every contract at this point can and should be notarized. When you think that now you could notarize signatures over the internet. Have you seen this? You just come on a video call with somebody. They verify, you hold up your driver's license next to you. They get down your information. It's an online notary. It's a thing. But it should be like you have facial recognition on your iPhone that even through DocuSign, I'm surprised it's not a thing. Like on DocuSign, you should be able to register with your driver's license or passport, your face and your fingerprint, because almost every computer now has that. Yeah. So that when you sign a DocuSign, it takes a screenshot or video of your face for a few seconds. You put your thumbprint down on the computer or your phone, recognizes it, and it knows that it should be a thing.
Well, I tell people when homeowners, like if they do a Zoom with me or, when I'm talking, somebody asks me about how to secure everything and what about renters and things like that. I tell them to start notarizing all your leases because regardless if it's required or not, if you ever go through the civil process and you ever go to in front of a judge or whatever, and they have a fake lease, if you can show that your notarized leases have a different signature, I got my lease notarized when I went up. I got from my mom and I got it notarized before I went up north, before I went to deal with them, because if they had a fake one, I wanted a notarized one showing her signature. So I suggest the homeowners just do it regardless of the law. But the thing is that how it's explained to me is that when they're trying to pass a law bill or they're trying to do something, they're trying to get it past, past both sides. You're dealing with both spectrums of the political, body. They have to, that just happened to be one of the things that they had to remove because they weren't going to get it to pass.
Why is that not the case also in other states? Why is it just Florida that seems to be taking this seriously and almost every other state is somewhat in a limbo?
Well, I say it's because squatters and squatter laws and making it criminal is common sense. And, DeSantis is, from what I understand, he's known as the common sense governor. So, it had to start somewhere. So, he's showing with he's got a lot of different things coming out right now, including stopping the retail theft. Yeah. You can go in, they can steal up to $5,000 and you're not allowed to stop them. So he signed a bill I just saw recently to stop that. Something is going to happen in this country to reset us back to where we're all on the same page.
Yeah, I saw PBD was recently talking about a new proposal in San Francisco that would make it so that big corporations like big box stores like Targets and Nordstrom's can't just move out. They have to give notice to the community for several months before they choose to voluntarily leave. How crazy is that? Because they say that it's hurting the neighborhoods and that consumers need to have time to figure out other options for their shopping. So if like a Walgreens decides one day, hey, we have too much theft, we're closing down, they'd have to give 3 months notice.
Then stiffen the penalties for looting. It's like when you got people on the streets burning things down and breaking into stores, it's like, start setting an example, start showing these businesses that you're going to take care of them. When that happens, You know, you want to have your stipulations. If they feel protected and they can afford to stay there and they want to move, and you want to say, you should let us know. But they're moving because of survival.
Now, I'm curious, how does your business work? How did you realize that you could turn your one experience into a repeatable business?
It was not intentional. In my first video, I even say that, you know, the realtors up there, the sheriff up there, they were all saying, oh my gosh, you can make a killing up here. And I had said, I laughed it off. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do this for a living. And people were writing me saying, hey, you know, everybody loves you. You know, they support you and you're getting all this. So why don't you use it for something good? So right away, something good for me was law change. Thought I can help everyone if I start fighting for law change. So I announced that. And then, you know, it was just kind of like this thing. It was kind of like, okay, so what can I do to keep awareness going and build it even stronger? Because me just saying, I want to fight for law change wasn't enough. So I thought, well, the only way I can is if I really just start helping people one at a time. If I start helping them, then I'm going to bring awareness to it. And at that point, it will give me a stronger message for law change. My number one goal is law change. So I essentially am trying to work myself out of business. You know, I wasn't trying to start a business for financial reasons. This business was started to basically stop what's created my business in the first place. I spend so much time on my Zooms. I'm literally living like reverse psychology because I start every Zoom with, I've studied they'll send me an email of everything that's going on. Before I talk to them, I've studied it. And my number one thing about that is, how can I teach them to take care of it without me? I do not ever enter a Zoom thinking, I want to go take care of this one, because I don't. The truth is, I would rather live with my teenagers. I go onto these Zooms and I'm talking to them about how they can do it. Go do this. Go file this form.
What's your advice? Let's just say I have a squatter. What would your advice be to me on that Zoom? And like a quick summary.
I would tell you, do you have any resources? Do you have any friends? Do you have, you know, do you have a contractor? Do you have anybody that you can lease the property to that can literally move in on this property? Move in and, you know, and stay there until they leave. Or, you know, are they leaving? Oh, they're going to work, or they're gone. Oh, they're like gone all the time. They come back and they're here a couple of days and then they're gone. I'm like, then have them move in and occupy the house. So when they come back, the house is basically the same thing that they did to you. So, you know, I'll just go, I mean, every scenario is different. And then I also have to learn about the squatters before I can give that advice. But I spend so much time just kind of going, okay, well, you don't need me. I have one yesterday that I told him, I went through this whole thing and I said, look, you don't need me. He's like, so I can make my uncle a leaseholder and let him move in the house? I'm like, absolutely. I said, as long as he says the right things, law enforcement won't ask him to leave. But what's funny with reverse psychology, what happens, the more I tell them that they can do it on their own, the more they want me.
What are the right things to say to the police officers?
You know, basically that, you know, I have a lease. I have items in this home. You know, this is a civil matter. Remind them that their job basically stops at that point. They can't enter the home. And basically just kind of tell them that it's a civil matter and say, look, they are well within their right to take me to civil court. I tell people, I'm like, look, you have a right. You have rights. You have right to civil process. Unfortunately, now you have to fight the civil process living somewhere else. And as of today, no one's ever tried.
How much do you charge for your services to actually go and move in a property?
It ranges anywhere from, you know, $1,000 to $20,000. We are going to do a move in. It'll basically be, you know, it's $5,000 a week. It's
surprisingly affordable when you compare it to an attorney.
But unfortunately, right now, I'm getting two types of people. One that's already put out 20 grand or 30 grand to an attorney, and they're already out of money and they're reaching out to me, like looking for the miracle solution. Or you have the one that hasn't paid a dime yet, and he still just doesn't understand the fact that he's going to have to. If I can't get him out for 20,000, I'm not going to be able to get him out. There's not, you know, but we go into it looking at, look, it's like I tell people, look, I can guarantee my efforts. I can guarantee what I'm going to do. I can't guarantee reaction. So just like an attorney, when they go through that process, they're never going to guarantee they're going to get your squatter out. So I can't guarantee 100% I'm going to get your squatter out. But you have to go into it thinking that it's worth a try, because the alternative is so much more expensive and so much longer.
So what's the hardest squatter that you've had to deal with so far?
The one that climbs in the bedroom window that has nothing to lose, and I have an elderly woman that refuses to leave. You know, when you have a homeowner that's there that we have to relocate because we can't go in, and you have a squatter who doesn't care about not having a bathroom, not having electricity, and climbing in and out of a broken bedroom window.
Where does the squatter use the restroom?
Bucket. Probably. Why is it the homeowner leaving? What's her issue with relocating, or just finding a hotel, or staying anywhere, an Airbnb for a week?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to work that out. I mean, I've got social services involved.
Is it a money issue that she just doesn't have the money?
There's a money issue. She's out of money completely. There's also, an issue with, it's really hard to get like somebody that's like old and been in a place and in a position, for so many years, to get them to like.
I would imagine a GoFundMe and just the charity of someone locally who has like a spare house or an empty house that they're doing, would love to give it to her for like, hey, 2 weeks.
Yeah, unfortunately, the GoFundMe for that one, it's spelled out what it's for. And because I run across an elderly situation, this is pretty common.
Yeah.
So, it's that GoFundMe is just, it's not making any, there's no contributions going to it. Yeah.
How much is in there right now?
So like in the last, I don't know, I haven't checked recently, but the last time I checked, it was like, it's been up for like 4 months and it had like $25 on there.
How much does she need?
So if it depends on if we have to do a move-in with this woman. So if a move-in is going to be anywhere from 10 to 20,000, it just depends, because we're paying guys and we're paying, it's like my guys aren't doing it for free.
We'll leave the link to the GoFundMe in the description of this video.
But like I had a situation in Woodland Hills where, I used the fact that, when I get to know these people, and if they have a criminal record and they have a felony, some felonies prohibit living with or owning or possessing a firearm, so there's, I've had a couple situations now to where as soon as I find that out, I just make residents with a firearm. Once I make residents with a firearm in the location, I tell them, look, I'm here with a firearm and you're not allowed to be here anymore. So we can call law enforcement, get them involved, but I believe it's a parole violation,
to be on the same premise as a firearm.
Yeah.
Are you ever worried about your safety? I think being armed?
I have to be. And that's what helps with the preparation. I just, I have to go in fully, body armor and be prepared. But I'll never go into a situation that I don't have time to prep for. As much as these homeowners will email me and it's like urgent, whatever, I can't rush what I'm doing. Nothing at that point, once they're already in your house, nothing is urgent, so it's all about being prepared. And I know that, I can't do it by myself anymore. I have to make sure that I've got people around me. And if that means adding guys and adding bodies. And the other thing I'm always doing is I make sure that I'm always on camera. I don't do anything without putting everyone on camera. So that way it's protecting, I say it's protecting me and them.
And you're talking about building out a squatter team? It's like a squatter hunter team?
Yeah, I've been building for the last, I guess maybe the last month. I did a video about it, and I've been telling people that if they want to help get squatters out, to email me to submit@squatterhunters.com and basically submit their name, tell us about themselves, what makes them a good fit, their location, any qualifications. And I've had enormous, I haven't even been able to get through all of the applicants. But one of the things that has, I guess, in a way surprised me, but I'm so excited about it, is the law enforcement. The law enforcement reaction to this, of guys that are retired that say they've been on the force for 30 years and have had to unfortunately walk away from homeowners and feeling so horrible that I'm finally giving them an opportunity to help a homeowner. So a lot of retired law enforcement. And then I have active law enforcement that say, hey, I just need to get it approved with the department because any job we do outside of the department has to be approved, but we want to help you. We want to be one of your squatter hunters. So I'm looking forward to working with law enforcement in that way. And, it doesn't have to be law enforcement. I've got military, I've got just anybody, because I'm going to train them to do what I do. But most of the time, their whole job is just going to be basically to keep their mouth shut and stand behind me. So, because I don't want people talking and getting into the conversations, because the more people talking, the more exaggerated it gets, the more chance of violence it gets, because now you got people arguing. So most of these guys are just going to be, it's like closed mouth, stand there, look tough, and that's it.
Have you received any backlash for what you're doing? And who's against you? Who opposes what you're doing?
Squatters.
They're the only
any
ones.
dislikes on your video, if you could somehow figure out who that is and add that to the blacklist of renters.
Squatters.
I've had some people that, it's so funny because they'll comment, they'll threaten me physically, they'll threaten me, whatever, ruin me. And it's so funny because then they'll delete it, like it goes away. So I'll screenshot all of those. And I often think I'm going to do a video highlighting them. I feel like it's squatters. And also there's been a misconception about me wanting, squatter law change. And, a lot of people fight back against me and refuse to sign my petition. And they refuse to, and they'll comment in there that they don't want these laws to change because it will affect their tenant rights. And so one of the things that I'm really trying to get out there is that tenant rights will still exist. Tenants will still deserve civil process. If whether you have a lease or not, you're going to be able to show communication with an owner. If you can show a text message, an email, showing some acknowledgement that you were there legally, then you're still going to be protected by civil process. So I get, a lot of renters, a lot of people that think that they're going to lose their tenant rights, don't like what I'm doing. And a lot of times when I have a go back and forth with them, then we end on good terms and they're like, oh, I didn't look at it that way or something. A lot of them, I have to assume they're squatters.
What do you think of the Beverly Hills house? It seems like that's a very common thing now. Like Beverly Hills, West Hollywood, you have these huge mansions that are owned by people overseas. Someone will come in there and throw these wild parties.
Yeah. I mean, it's another one of those things where, it's wrong. And then you're like, well, I mean, we have a system that's letting them do it. And they're just a bunch of kids that are basically going, hey, it's, we can do it. We can make a bunch of money here, and they're charging entrance fees and renting out rooms. And, so they're looking at themselves as entrepreneur, like, oh my gosh, I figured out a system. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, it's wrong. It needs to stop, but yeah, that's becoming kind of a new thing. And it's like a whole new generation of squatting.
The one that really brought it to my attention was the Brentwood example, where I think it was a dentist, lived in the main house, built out a guest unit, didn't get that properly permitted. So it didn't have the certificate of occupancy. So he did all the work, but he had a contractor do it. The lady moved in with a lease. I think she moved in purposely knowing that it was, unpermitted because it didn't have that certificate. And then just stay there for years. Right.
She actually entered through Airbnb.
That was it. Yep.
Yeah. She entered through Airbnb and then gave him a sob story when the Airbnb contract was up and asked him to stay for an extra couple weeks. The mistake he made was not putting it back through Airbnb and putting it back on them. So he made a mistake. And, she took advantage of it. I was on my way up there to do an intervention with her and to film a documentary the day that she left. They told her I was on my way. I doubt she left because of me, but I kind of had fun with the fact that I was the first form of media to actually video and take pictures of the unit after she left, because she left like
Wow.
literally 15 minutes before I got there.
I thought it was hilarious. She was treated like a celebrity. Like when that story broke, I remember just like maybe it was TMZ who was taking photos of her with like a mystery man at dinner. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
She's like getting trailed and followed and photographed and videoed everywhere she goes.
Yeah, now her face is one of them on my website.
Yeah. There was also another story recently where a New York homeowner was arrested after a standoff with a squatter. She changed the locks, and as a homeowner, she's not allowed to lock them out of the unit, and she was arrested for that. And that was a story that also went crazy viral because here's a homeowner trying to take their property back, matters into their own hands, and they're the one arrested. It seems backwards.
Yeah, and I think that that's a good message that homeowners need to understand, that the only person arrested in those situations will be the homeowner. You know, so if you take the matters into your own hands, just expect that you're going to be arrested. They ended up dropping charges, and they didn't, prosecute that homeowner, and they kind of did it just to send the message. But yeah, I mean, homeowners need to kind of stay away and either do the legal process or, do what I'm doing, or, contact squatter hunters and let us take care of it.
Yeah. I think it would be amazing if you did, if you posted like on a regular basis, like every 2 weeks on your channel. Like there's people who do the I don't want to say the name, the pea hunters. They meet up with like underage people and they post the whole story from beginning to end of like catching them with these chats and then
who
saying
the person is,
all
who
these
conversations, the entire storyline, and then at the end a very strong resolution.
Right. And it's just interesting seeing these people like just show up and try to meet someone who's a minor, and then just having this confrontation, just like the meeting in the middle of like a Target somewhere. And
I'm going to be putting up a lot more videos. I've been kind of holding off, just dealing with the possible TV deal. But one of the things, like the next couple videos that I'm putting up, they're more about, I've given, one guy that I show he's breaking in this house. I gave him 48 hours to move out. And if he didn't move out, I was going to expose him. He broke into that house after attending a Beyonce, Jay-Z Oscar party. So he's in a suit and, he claims claims to be, longtime friend of Joan Collins. And he got all these pictures with all these people. And I plan on exposing him as a squatter and hashtagging all of these people that he claims are his friends.
wow.
And then I've got another one that her and her son and daughter moved into an apartment literally when the tenant moved out. It was one of those cases where they moved in before the maintenance crew got in. I've given her warning, so I'm going to expose. So I'm going to start doing some exposing videos. And then if I can get through the exposure and put the pressure on them, then I'll show the solution, video after that.
What's the craziest squatter situation you've been in?
Yeah. I mean, I think that crazy woman that I waited 2 hours in the dark and literally waited in the backyard, dressed in black, waiting for her to come and catch her on camera. I was by myself. I had a headlamp on my head, that LED bright light, so she couldn't see who I was. She didn't know who I was or if I had people with me or not. That's a person that there were reports that she had literally stabbed someone in the back before, she had crystal meth in her bra. She was a crazy person. So the craziest thing for me is the unknown. I'm not putting myself in positions where it can go wrong. That day I did, though. I didn't know how it was going to go. I was by myself. It was on a whim. I didn't have any backup. I just kind of went. I'm like, I've been trying to get a hold of this woman. I've been trying to get her on camera for weeks, and she kept avoiding me. So I figured, you know what? I'm going to wait in this backyard. And as long as it takes, I was in the backyard for 2 hours. It's pitch black. And I see a cell phone or a camera light coming or a flashlight coming down the walkway. Mm-hmm. And, I wait for her to put her leg up to climb into a window and pop out of the bushes. So that's kind of the craziest feeling situation I've ever been in. I don't know. It's just, it doesn't seem crazy when I've got guys behind me. It just doesn't seem crazy.
I'm just trying to workshop this specific woman that's clearly abusing this elderly woman. What other strategies could you put like barbed wire, razor wire all around that window? Could you just put a bunch of people dressed up in scary outfits and scare her when she walks through that alley every single night? Like, what tactics could you use to make her very uncomfortable?
I can't do anything until the older woman is off the property. So I've already, I blocked her out everywhere. I even boarded up her window, and she got there and called the cops and had her boyfriend pull the boards off. And, but because there's a history of 911 responses to that residence, she's set precedents that she's there. So the only thing I will be able to do to get her out is literally moving in. And when she's got a bunch of guys there that she's dealing with and not an old lady, we'll get her out. One of the reasons why this elderly woman who's 88 years old, one of the reasons she needs to go is because they have it down that when law enforcement arrives on the property, the caregiver squatter says, she's got dementia, she's got Alzheimer's, she forgets who I am, she calls the police. They have this written in there. Now, I've gone into law enforcement, I've said, hey, that's not the case. I've got video of this woman, she's very lucid, she signed a lease for me, and they had it literally in the notes that the woman has Alzheimer's, and they listen to the caregiver and leave. And many times, they don't even talk to the older lady. They basically just meet the caregiver in the street. She says everything's fine, and then they leave. So a situation with her there, I don't want to take a chance, because as long as she's there, that's who law enforcement want to talk to. And I won't even, as you see in my first video, they went peacefully. They took my offer. My offer was, I'm not going to expose your name and I'm not going to expose your face. So I didn't. So, I tell them, look, my number one goal isn't, the most entertaining video. My number one goal is get squatter out. So if they will leave without no problems, I will make them an offer. I might say, hey, I'm going to do the video. I'm going to share the story, but I'll blur your face, and I won't expose your name. But I want everyone to know about the situation. I actually had someone this past week. They reached out to me, the beginning of the month. They reached out to me, and they're like, and it's this woman, supposed woman, Karen. She emails me. She says, hey, is there an address I can send? I want to send you, I appreciate what you're doing, love everything you're doing, and I want to support what you're doing. And can I send you a contribution? And I'm like, okay. I'm like, oh, you know what? Just Venmo, or, you can even do GoFundMe, whatever. And she's like, oh no. She's like, well, I don't have Venmo. And she's like, I would rather just send you a check. She says, I can ACH you. Okay. So I didn't want to give my name. I didn't want to give everything. So I'm like, I reach out and I'm like, ask a friend. I'm like, can I give your name? And, and I'll just have it sent to a PO box or whatever. So I go this past week, go to the PO box, find this priority mail envelope with $30.45 postage. And then I'm thinking anthrax, and I'm like standing downwind opening this thing thinking, there's going to be some powder in there or something. So I open it up, and it's a cashier's check for $100,000.
Oh, no.
Okay. So I'm like, oh my God, that's so amazing. I'm like, that is just the feeling that somebody cares that much. And I know that there's all these people out there that have tons of money. They're old, and they're like, what am I going to do with this money? So I'm thinking there's always that chance that somebody's going to want to fund, and because I can get anywhere from 5 to 20 squatters out with that money.
Yeah.
So I get it. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. So I don't email her back yet. I'm like, let's put it through the bank. Let's see what happens. Right. So we go to the bank, and they scan it through the bank, and they're like, okay, there's going to be a hold on, until the 23rd of April. And they're like, yeah, the routing number says it's, drawn off of Wells Fargo, and cashier's check. It's, they're pretty much guaranteed by institution. And I'm like, okay. So I write this heartfelt email, just thanking this person. And then I get an email back, and it says, Flash, we've had some in-house issues. We've had some banking issues. And since I sent that, we've had to change institutions. And she says, please, like, don't deposit and destroy that check. And then she says, give me your bank account number and routing number and we'll transfer you the same amount. And so I'm like, okay, well, wait a minute. That just seems wrong. So I take a copy of it and I go into Wells Fargo. They look it up and they're like, this isn't from us and the bank account doesn't exist and we think it's fraud. So I'm like, what the hell? Like, why would somebody do this, right? So then I'm thinking, okay, well, they're doing it to get my routing number and whatever. But if I was to give a routing number and bank account to somebody, I'd give it to a savings account that I got $10 in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking, okay, do I just ignore it? Whatever. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to play the game. So I email back. I said, well, if you truly believe in what I'm doing and you want to contribute, then just send another check. They responded. And I'm thinking, I'm expecting a response to be like, oh yeah, just send me that routing number or, something like that. But instead they respond and say, well, yeah, my gosh, we love what you're doing and whatever. And she says, we're going to send a new check. This time it's going to come from, and she names a corporation. And the other one was done anonymously. And it was like literally in private and it was no names. And it was, so then she names a corporation and says, this time the check is going to come from RHL or whatever, International Incorporated or something, right? So I'm thinking, mind boggling, because I'm like, first of all, like, what do they get out of it? And second of all is like, it doesn't make sense if they send me another check and they pay the postage. Mm-hmm. The same thing would happen. If you receive $100,000, you're right away, your red flags are going to be up and you're going to be like, let me get this checked out, right? If they sent $100 to get my banking info, red flags aren't as high.
All right.
It's like, oh, okay, $100. And you're like, oh, so you really meant to send 90. Okay, send me $10. That's like when you look up the cashier's check scams.
I sent too much. They send me something back and it bounces. Yeah.
By the time it clears, you're out your money. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, I've been going through my head going, what could they possibly, besides messing with my head, why would they respond back to me after I said, I'm not sending you my bank information? So weird. So I'm not expecting anything of it.
So this is still ongoing?
This was like literally this weekend that they said that they're going to issue another check. So when I get the other check, I'll go into the bank and do the same thing. And I won't deposit it this time. This time I'll see where it's written off of. I don't understand what they get out of it because they're not getting my banking info. So I don't know. But what's funny is I had just done a Zoom with someone, and the sad part is like, after I got that check, I'm thinking, I met this woman that has a Down syndrome child and she can't afford to do anything. And she has these squatters. So I told her that I'm going to still fulfill my obligation, but I'm going to do this one. I'm going to cover it because I was going to just take from that. In the beginning for the first 8 months, I was doing everything for free. I was paying my guys out of my pocket because my heart was so into this. I felt so bad for these people. The Fleishman one was all out of my pocket. I did it. It was free. And I said, I've been like hashtagging Elon Musk. I'm like, cause I'm just looking for somebody to be like, just to give me their pocket change. And I used the $100,000. I'm like, just somebody give me $100,000 so that I can just like start doing videos and showing that this contribution aided to this.
I bet that there's going to be some company out there that would sponsor your endeavors. Just imagine that, and they say, hey, we'll pay for the next 5 squatter removals, but you post your videos and mention or publicly mention that we're helping remove these people.
Right.
Or one wealthy donor who just says, you know what, this system is broken. I want to help with this. I want to make the difference.
Right. So, so I had just said that on a Zoom and then I get this check and it was like, holy crap, it's so.
Could be legit. You never know. I'm suspicious of it.
But it's like, okay, so what, they're fraud and then they're, oops, we sent them the wrong one.
It's weird if it is a fraud to spend $35 on postage.
Yeah.
Unless they paid with like a stolen credit card or something like that, and they're using someone else's info, and someone's getting a charge on that.
But I'm thinking to myself, if I'm doing that, and
maybe someone you removed,
and they say, and they're like, no, I'm not going to send the banking info, but just send a check. I'm cutting my losses, and I'm not offering to send another check. Well, they think I'm going to send the banking info after another check, and they don't know that I deposited it. So they don't know that I got it checked out. They don't know that I know it.
Well, that's a crime at that point, right? Writing a fake check or giving a fake cashier's check.
It's all a crime, but scam artists, it's trying to find out who they are. I don't even know if it's a woman.
You can't talk to them on the phone?
I mean, it's all been
a Zoom.
It's all been email. So they don't know that I know that the other one was no good. So because her thing was, don't deposit it, destroy it. We're going to send you another one.
I've written cashier's checks before, plenty of them. It's very difficult to get them canceled. And when they are, so like if there's actually money on that cashier's check and you give it to somebody and you cancel it, the cancellation I think is like, you have to wait like 90 days or 120 days of it going uncashed to be able to get your money back. Because they want to prevent you from like giving a cashier's check. You give me your car, you sign a title.
You can't get it back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
it's only, they only do it if you think that it was lost.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct. So there'd be no way for them to cancel that unless they just forego the money.
But what they're saying is that
it could be
now people, because it had all the different like security things. You look at it and you see that it had all of that. So, but they said that they're making them. And, and the reason why those are supposed to be secure is because it's not drawing off of a bank account. It's actually drawing off of the bank, because they've had to take the money out of their account, put it into the bank's possession, but that one, they said that unless it's some weird bank or whatever, they said that they don't show that account even existed. So, cause the routing number was Wells Fargo, but she went back, went into the archives like 20 years or something and said, no, that this account doesn't exist.
TBT.
But yeah, exactly.
If we have an update, we'll put it in the description. How's that? If you figure it out before we post this, we'll put an update in the description.
Yeah. Be nice. It's a nice thought that if somebody cares that much about it, and, there's a lot of people that doesn't matter to, and they would be helping a lot of people.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. We'll link to all of your information down below in the description. And if anyone wants to help you out, we'll link to just your information so people could reach out to you, figure something out.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
Really
appreciate it.
it.
All right.
Till
Thanks,
next
guys.
time.
See ya.